what brought you into this line of work? Because I know it was personal.
Yeah, no, it was definitely not something I thought about until I started having children. So it was my own journey with parenthood and parenting. And, it really, I can remember I was a metals trader. I actually was running a commodities trading firm in Hong Kong. And my husband is an architect and has a firm, and everybody's, doing their professional lives and super busy. And then kids come. And our son was 2 years old and such a good guy. I mean, he was the sweetest little 2-year-old. Yet there were still moments, where my husband and I were deer in headlights. And I remember us literally saying, we're probably supposed to do something now, like, I wonder what that is.
Right.
And there'd be like teachable moments. I'll just call them teachable moments. And these teachable moments as the parents arise all the time with our kids. And then the question is, okay, but how do we go about, and what is it that we want to teach? And honestly, the only thing any parent has to rely on is their upbringing. And what they've experienced becomes the blueprint for what they do. And that may not have been like version 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, 5.0 of parenting. It may have just been version 1.0, and there's like numerous upgrades that could be implemented to make this child's experience growing up different than your own. And I think probably there's no parent alive who doesn't have things they reflect on that wish they, had been different. And there are probably things they reflect on and really appreciate and love and want to bring forward. And I guess it's the capacity to be able to sift through and make choices around that. And that's what I didn't know how to do as I started my parenting journey.
Absolutely.
So we looked for a class. Yeah, my husband and I looked for a class. We found a class. We took a class. And it was such an amazing course. It changed our lives. And that's where we got started, was just looking for, parenting education courses to give us some roadmaps. But what I didn't know was going to happen was that it would become my passion, and that I would end up taking this class literally over and 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 over. And not because the ideas were difficult to understand intellectually, they were difficult to implement. And how to be a compassionate listener, and how to not focus on my experience of your meltdown as opposed to, oh my God, you're melting now. What can I do for you? Like, that switch is not easy. So I was looking for mastery because that's just kind of like the A personality that I am. And what that led me to was really my career, my passion for the last, I guess, 28 years.
Yeah. And I can so relate to the whole mastery because, working with American SPCC, talking about these topics in different forms a lot of the time. And I have a 3 and a 5-year-old, and I catch myself in these moments sometimes struggling to implement what it is I know I should be doing. So I'm here with all
That's
ears
it.
today.
Bingo. Yeah. That's the one.
Because when it's heightened and the stress is real and the emotions are high and you were parented in a very different way, all of those things kind of coming together make it difficult. And I know that you have your own approach called the guidance approach. And I wonder if you could kind of break that down and explain how it relates to other forms people might have heard of.
Yeah, absolutely. So the guidance approach to parenting was really born out of my own experience of learning a lot of other people's approaches to parenting. And my journey was starting with parent effectiveness training, Dr. Thomas Gordon's material. And I was definitely, at that time, believe it or not, and I know it's relatively recent, but the Effectiveness Training Institute of Australia was actually where I went to become a certified instructor, because they were the only ones who were certifying Gordon's approach. So I became a certified instructor in his approach and, carried the flag wholeheartedly for many, many years, and still look as though the contributions Gordon made, which he was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize numerous times, were profound. I feel like I stand on the, shoulders of giants, right? Yeah. So he was a giant. And it wasn't until I went to a conference, and the keynote speaker was a woman named Dr. Louise Porter, who wrote the book Children Are People Too. And I heard her speak, and I bought her book, and I sat next to her at the luncheon, and, I really embraced like what she had written about. And I noticed that she diverged from Gordon in numerous ways. And that kind of freaked me out. So I wrote to her and I was like, hi, you don't know me, but I sat next to you at the lunch and I read your book. And it turns out like you've got a whole different perspective on a number of things. That's like blowing my mind. Are you sure about that? And she said, yeah, I am, but I'm happy to walk you through it. And I was like, okay, I need that. And so over the course of what would really become a lifelong friendship, and working through some of these, I'm just going to call them more advanced ideas around language, that she did an upgrade. And that was my first upgrade. And I started to integrate these different perspectives around things like iMessages and how we talk about feelings in ways in which we're not blaming the other person for how we feel, and just some real nuanced ways that we have conversations that are cleaner.
Yeah. Could you give some more examples? I mean, I know there's so many and you're like, how far should I go?
Yeah. Right. How deep dive do you want to go into the nuanced differences between my program and other people's? But Gordon would say, I'm really upset about this and I feel sad or hurt or worried. And, I want to talk to you about this thing that you did that made me feel this way. So the way that he would talk about I feel because was set up in a way in which you actually inadvertently are blaming the other person for how you feel. Mm-hmm. And Louise was really good at being able to say, the problem is that people are so duped into sensing that other people blame them for their feelings that they then start to take responsibility as if they really are responsible for other people's feelings. Mm-hmm. So she started the conversation around how do we talk about our feelings without blaming other people for them.
Wow. And
that's huge.
I thought you froze there because you had such a good smile.
Here. Okay. Yeah, that's huge. And then, so I started to integrate this. The other thing that Louise really brought to the surface that Gordon hadn't spoken about was the fact that children are a marginalized community. She didn't use those words, but essentially the reason that she wrote the book, That Children Are People Too, was because we need to highlight the fact that children are looked down upon and we don't take their feelings seriously. And their needs are always to be subjugated to that of the older person in the room. And I didn't have a framework for that level of prejudice until I met Louise. And it wasn't really even covered in Gordon's training. So there were just ways in which she enhanced the conversation that I got to have with parents as a coach. And then through her, I was introduced to Marshall Rosenberg, who's the founder of the Center for Nonviolent Communication, CNVC. And when I bought his book, and she later was at my home in Hong Kong and said, oh, wow, that's one of my favorite books. Have you read that book? And I said, not yet. She said, it's the best book I read last year. And I was like, oh my God. So I went tearing through the book. And I instantly realized that he was a teacher for me. So I signed up for his international intensive training in Santa Barbara. And this must have been back in like 03, 04. So a while ago. And it changed my life. And now and here's the irony, because Gordon and Rosenberg and another guy who I later became familiar with, Gendlin, were all students of Carl Jung. And they were all students of Carl Jung at the same time at the University of Chicago. And so they were all singing from the same song sheet, but with a different nuanced perspective. So what Marshall brought to light for me was that not only what you think about me is none of my business, and that you're not responsible for how I feel, and really kind of like deepening and highlighting more around that whole conversation. And how do I even talk to you about what's going on for me without this becoming you're responsible for my feelings conversation, which is such an irresponsible conversation. Mm-hmm. So this is, I would say, the core difference that I started to really emphasize, was that we as adults have been so brainwashed our whole lives, growing up in families of origin where people didn't have the language to create the distinction and were triggered, catalyzed by something. And this is Marshall's language. He would say, you have to distinguish between something being the catalyst and the cause of how you feel. And that's it right there. Boom. So if you believe that somebody is the cause rather than just the catalyst, if you think they're the cause, the way that you language everything after that moment is going to be blame consciousness.
Mm-hmm. So could you maybe give me an example of how, an old conversation with the kiddo might look from when your kids are maybe really little? to how maybe you would have reframed that, looking back now?
Sure. So, the conversation where you've got a parent who's thinking that child is responsible for their feelings of upset is like, how could you do that again? Look how you make me feel. You've upset me when you didn't pick up your dishes. You have upset me when you didn't clean up your room. You have made me so upset because you didn't do la, 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 la. I mean, that conversation is just not distinguishing between how I'm feeling, and the catalyst was that I expected something to be done and it wasn't. Mm-hmm. And the way that I'm having a conversation with you about it is to just say, it's the thing you didn't do that made me feel this way.
Okay. So give me a little approach if I'm talking to my
Sure.
4-year-old about doing that same thing, knocking something off, something breaks. And I said, you got to stop climbing that. That shelf's too high. And now we're breaking things. How do I go about that? What's a better
that's
approach?
Actually okay. You've got to stop climbing that. You're breaking things. There's no problem with that conversation.
Just don't say that it's upsetting me and I'm sick of being
Well, you could say, I'm upset.
Okay.
I'm upset about this. And I just want to be clear that you're not responsible for my feelings, but I have feelings. And so that's a conversation that really begins to create this idea that, oh, wow, mom has feelings, dad has feelings, people on the planet have feelings. And I could possibly be a catalyst for those feelings arising, but I'm not the one who made the feeling there. So a lot of my own experience of myself is that when I'm more rested or I have more bandwidth, I can be in the midst of one of those catalysts. And what may arise for me is a sense of concern, worry, or it could be agitation, anger, and some other feelings. And this is a breakthrough for a lot of people to be able to step back and go, oh, wow, that's true. What I'm experiencing from this catalyst on any given day, my own personal sense of my inner relationship to it could be different. And there are a lot of factors that affect that. And when you begin to realize that, you break out of thinking other people are responsible for how you feel, and the emphasis therefore is getting on them to change so you can feel better. The problem with that approach is that when you train children to believe that you have to make other people change in order for you to be feeling better, you may not be able to succeed at getting little Johnny to invite you to their birthday party so you can feel better. So are you doomed to not feeling better because you can't get that catalyst to change their behavior? Or can you have a different relationship to the feeling that's coming up inside of you so that little Johnny learns how to be with that sense of, oh, that's really disappointing. Yeah, I'm experiencing that there's something in me that's really sad about that.
And that's okay.
And I'm going to be with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to be with that sense of something in me that feels sad about that. And by doing that and teaching that kind of inner dialogue practice, children can develop that sense of self inside where they have something in them, but they don't become merged with high emotion.
Okay. That seems like something all of us could work on to an extent, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I know we have to talk about this because this is such a core part that stands out for me about what you talk about is how you use rewards and punishments or don't in your parenting, and why you might want to reconsider that.
Absolutely. And I mean, this goes back to both Marshall Rosenberg and Thomas Gordon and Louise Porter and everybody who's in this sort of genre. Where Gordon did the research on the 3 R's, retaliation, rebellion, and resistance are activated when you use a controlling form of discipline. So if you look at the primary issue as something that you're trying to change, and the primary issue is you want to get them to, clean up their room or put the dishes away, or you want them to study more, whatever the primary issue is for you as a parent, how you go about having a conversation to discuss that very thing can activate a response. And then depending on how you went to go discuss that very thing, if you activate the retaliation, rebellion, and resistance, then you've got all these things we call the secondary problems that are activated. And when those secondary problems get activated, you spend all your time on their response to how you dealt with the very initial issue. And so it becomes this is Dr. Louise Porter's research, which is that 75% of behavioral disruptions are dealing with reactions to power being used over someone. Meaning 3 out of 4 of your problems are actually dealing with the reaction to how you went about dealing with the primary problems. And then we get spun out into these secondary problems, and they become the breakdown of our closeness. And they become the breakdown, and kids can be in reaction for years. And, you know, it can just get worked because then the parent begins to feel like, how dare you talk to me that way?
Yeah.
And then we become in reaction to their reaction. And then kind of the rest of the relationship is built around the response to having power used over them.
It's kind of one big misunderstanding.
It's a huge misunderstanding, and it's tragic because I had a parent recently who I coached contact me, and she was so upset about her daughter and how her daughter was treating her brother and sister. And I mean, definitely people don't drown politely. And that's kind of one of the core messages, is that if you begin to notice that when people are struggling, they don't drown politely, then the idea is, okay, do I want to teach them how to drown politely, or do I want to help this person have the skills to be able to swim? Now, if someone is in the midst of falling apart and drowning impolitely, do I want to make it about my experience of them drowning impolitely? Or do I want to just focus on, wow, this person is really drowning. Oh my God, what can I do to help them? So she had a daughter who was drowning impolitely. And I said, now we can spend time together talking about your experience of your daughter who's drowning impolitely if you want to.
But
what we can just focus on, oh my God, your daughter's drowning and she's not doing it politely. And holy cow, what can we do to get in there and support her? Because the minute we give her more skills to deal with her inner world, she's going to stop drowning.
Yeah.
And all the problems that you're having, the way she treats her brother and sister, who happen to be the catalysts for these inner feelings and demons inside, which, you know, just to go further into the story, you know, one of the siblings is a great sportsman and the other sibling is really gifted socially. And she's neither a good sportsman or neither gifted socially. And so when she is around them, this something inside of her, that sense of inadequacy, gets activated. And then that painful something inside that's activated by these triggers outside, she then punishes them for causing this something inside to arise. So the work is helping her to be with that something, and have a relationship with it in a way in which it feels like she can accept that part of her, be with it just the way it is for as long as it needs to be that way, and that she can love it warts and all. And that it doesn't need to feel like it's being vilified or criticized or made to be wrong, but that she can just be with it. And as she develops an inner relationship and an inner dialogue with that part of her, then the relationships he's having outside of her will change.
Absolutely. That's such a good example. And I feel like it probably, the conversation you would have with your kiddo, given these moments, obviously would depend on their cognitive ability and their age. So I have an example from last night, Catherine. I'd like to
let's do it.
This is a 3-year-old that and right when I said, I was like, I'm going to ask Catherine about this tomorrow.
Yes, let's go there.
We were at her dance class, which she said she wanted to do. She's been doing it great, but yesterday did not want to go in, kicking and screaming, making a scene. I said, well, we're not going to go to Dairy Queen after then if you're going to have to go home. Right when I said it, I said, there's probably a reason I shouldn't have said that. How do I get to her level? Where do I go from there, as opposed to that? And what do I run into if I'm holding ice cream over, going into her event?
Absolutely. So I love your example, and thank you for sharing your personal story. So first of all, let me just ask, how did it go? I mean, it
did not go well. Dad had to come pick her up while she was
yelling and upset. Yeah. So, rewards and punishments focus on trying to manipulate someone to do something by promising them a hoped for reward or withholding it. Right? So there are two sides to the same coin. And what they ignore is that something was going on for your child at the moment that got in the way of her wanting to go into the room. And that's what I would be curious about.
And that's what I was thinking, because it was one of those hectic days where you're like, get in the car, get out. And could that have been this catalyst to just make her feel uneasy?
So it could have been that, or there could have been a relationship in the room. Or we really don't know until we start doing, the really inner listening work. So when a child signals that they're having trouble meeting their needs, and your child was signaling last night that she was having trouble meeting her needs in that space at that time. Maybe the signal was, I don't feel like I'm connected to you, Mom, and where have you been all day? And I could tell you we're upset, and what I really need right now is not to go to dance class, but I just really need to sit on your lap and go to Dairy Queen and have an ice cream together with you and have some mommy-daughter time.
No, you know, I'm taking her tonight now.
Right? Because, I mean, when I coach people in my programs and they tell me some stories about kids that are really, their behavior is, let's call it diabolical. It is truly the tragic expression of their unmet needs. And the tragic expression of unmet needs shows up in ways like your child. You know, I don't want to go. I refuse to go. Or it can be even bigger. I hate you, Mommy. I hate you, Daddy. I hate you, brother. I hate you, sister. Or it can be slamming the door, or it can be kicking the dog. I mean, it shows up in behaviors that are socially unacceptable that we would like not to have our children doing. Which is why, if we're not really grounded in some good skills, we can easily go into an overreaction around the behavior that's embarrassing. Because we want our kids to just be well behaved. And we don't want other people looking at us or doing this. Oh my God, did you see that woman's child?
Right.
Right. I mean, oh my God, please don't do that. So, you know, we just have to acknowledge that the behaviors that we want to punish are actually they're cries for help.
What would you suggest are a couple of things I could have said in that situation?
I think I would have gotten right down, you know, to her low level, and I would have looked her in the eye and I would have said, oh God, you really don't want to go today. And she would have said, no, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. And you would have said, yeah, there's something going on for you. And this is just not what you want to do right now. And she would say, no, Mommy, I don't want to go right now because, and maybe she'll give you more information. Because I just want to be with you. I don't want to be separated from you again. Maybe it's around just being together with you. I'm not sure. Does that ring true?
Well, she did want me to go in there with her, so that makes sense.
Yeah. So it was all about just mommy time.
Yeah.
And so if she said, would you come with me, please, Mommy? And you said, so you just really want me to come with you? Yeah, I really want you to come with me. I miss you. I feel like we didn't have enough time today. Maybe she has the words for that. I don't know. But maybe. Right. So then you're like, oh, wow, this is just about mommy-daughter time. It's not about not wanting to be responsible. It's that she was actually being responsible to the part of her that really needed connection.
That's fascinating. And like, when you say it, it makes so much sense, but it's like you said, hearing it, putting it into practice and you're.
Yeah. I mean, it's like we cross a lot of different landscape in terms of our programmed responses, which is why we say children are marginalized community. Their feelings are marginalized regularly, because instead of just looking at them as having feelings and needs that they're trying to meet, the feeling that was arising within her sounds like it was a feeling of, I don't know, distress, even worries. You know, she might have been anxious. There was something there. The feeling was there. And that feeling was arising from her unmet needs. So this is nonviolent communication, is recognizing that feelings arise from unmet needs. Feelings arise from needs being met too. So if we just begin to look at the landscape of all feelings are road signs. There are road signs. This feeling of joy that's arising within me is a road sign to my needs are met right now and I am loving life. That's what the road sign is. If I have another feeling that arises, the feeling itself is just information. And this is such a great framework for us to provide our families, is that the feelings arise and they're giving us information that, you know, follow this path here, because the unmet need over there, that's really the question over here is like, well, what is the unmet need? Because when we address the underlying unmet needs, the feelings change. And if we just talk about feelings all the time without being able to connect them to the needs that are actually behind and driving the feeling that's arising, where it's like we're just looking at one part of the equation, but it will never help us solve the equation.
Makes so much sense when you say it that way. I did want to ask, because we're kind of getting, I imagine it'd be about a half hour. So do you have a couple more minutes if I ask?
I have a couple of more minutes, yeah.
Okay. One thing I wanted to ask you about is how praise fits into all of this.
Don't do it. Don't ever do it.
And why is that?
Oh God, please. You know, if you want to praise your kids and lower their self-esteem, then, you know, that's the most direct way to do it. So observation without evaluation, acknowledgement is so important. Praise is so detrimental. So what's the difference between praise and acknowledgement? And the distinction is so profound and important, is that if you praise your children, you're saying to them, I'm so proud of you. And what that conveys to the child is, oh, okay, when I do this thing, you feel proud of me. And what we want them to begin to get in touch with is not what other people's experience of them is, but do I feel proud of myself? What's my own sense of experience of this thing that I'm doing? So what we want to do is highlight and verify when children are feeling excited about, you know, their accomplishments. And we want them to come home and say, I'm so proud of myself, Mom. You know, I did really well on my test. And you say, congratulations, that's so exciting. I know you worked so hard on that. And you don't say, I'm so proud of you, because then it begins to confuse the child about why they're motivated to do the things that they're motivated to do in their lives. Is it for that external validation? Other people feel about me and I want them to feel a certain way about me. Or is it that I feel really good about myself when I'm living into my values around hard work, into my values around mastery, into my values? So we want children to separate and individuate and to begin to develop their own sense of self and what makes them feel good about themselves. And whether you feel good about it or not is really ancillary, but rewards and punishments and praise are kind of tied together, because I think most families use praise as a way to reward a child to do the things they want them to do. They withhold the praise to get them or manipulate them to no longer do the thing that they don't want them to do. And the problem with both of these approaches is that they fail to acknowledge the fact that you can cultivate an external locus of control if you want to in a child, but it's dangerous. And most parents want their children to have high self-esteem. So we need to help them cultivate a sense of self, which is not what other people think about them. This is a huge topic. We could spend an hour on it.
And I know that, absolutely. When, you know what, we'll have to continue it on another time or dive deeper into some of these concepts. But we are so grateful to have you here. Where can people connect with you if they would like to learn more?
Yeah, you know, you can, all of you, go and just get your freeparentingbook.com. And you can download my free book on 7 strategies to help your deal with your relationship with your kids from hitting the boiling point. So freeparentingbook.com is probably the best place, easiest place for people to get a free book.
Wonderful. And if you want to hear more about the Trusted Parenting Network and all the positive parenting strategies and wonderful people we're working with, please do visit americanspcc.org or follow us on social media. Katherine, thank you so much for your time today.
So great to be here. Loved our conversation. Could go on for hours.
Yes. Well, we will talk again soon.
Sounds great. Thanks so much.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.